First, though, last week, the Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg was criticised by foodbank charities after he told LBC Radio that public donations to food banks were rather uplifting and that, inevitably, the state couldn't do everything. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn called the rise of food banks in the UK shameful. Next month, one of his MPs, Neil Coyle, will be sponsoring a performance in Parliament of a play called Foodbank As It Is, based on the experiences of users and staff. Writer and co-director Tara Osman told us why politicians need to hear their stories.
I don't want to be on benefits. I just need someone to give me a chance. I'm applying for anything and everything. What more am I supposed to do? When I am doing all that is asked of me and more, why does my child have to suffer? Why does he have to go to bed tonight with nothing to eat?
My name's Tara Osman. I started writing this play about a year and a half ago, and it's based on my experiences managing a central London food bank. It's one thing to hear statistics and see facts and figures, and we can quite easily switch off from all of that, but to actually sit down and listen to someone telling their story of their situation and how they've ended up coming to a food bank is a very different thing.
With no money, I have no way of getting to my other interviews this week. I'm trying to source food, gas and electric from my local charities. When my daughter and I get back from school and have to sit in the cold and dark, hungry, how then am I supposed to look for a job?
A huge part of it, and this is part of what actually shocked me quite a lot when I started, is that there are procedural problems with the benefit system that mean that people often are without any money at all for weeks on end. So that's a very common circumstance. I think also what I see more and more is that there are many, many households who are living chronically in poverty, and they might, just about manage, to use that well-worn phrase, but really, really just literally by the skin of their teeth managing, and then they'll have a sudden expense, or there'll be an interruption in their income, and they'll be not able to pay for gas or electricity. They won't be able to turn their fridge on. They won't be able to buy school uniforms or new shoes for their kids. I mean, really, we're talking severe poverty here. We start off with baked beans and soup. We've got chopped tomatoes and pasta. We open once a week for our clients for 3 hours on a weekday morning. Basically, people are referred here by services, people they've been in contact with who've identified that they are living in poverty and struggling to get hold of food. For some people, it really is the only food they get per week. So, for example, people who have no recourse to public funds, who don't have any connections in the local area, or they might have friends and family, but the friends and family are just as broke as they are.
Does that mean when I go back to the job centre on Friday to sign on again, that they will sanction my benefits again, this time for months, because I haven't been able to job search or even to get to my interviews?
I absolutely think it's a cross-party issue. It's not, human rights aren't a partisan issue. They are relevant to all of us. I feel incredibly privileged to have the chance to take this to some MPs. Well, actually, we've invited every MP. We're going to be in one of the committee rooms in the Palace of Westminster. If we set the room up a bit like a food bank, we have volunteers welcoming the audience in and giving them lists of what they're likely to receive, and a bit of banter going on with the volunteers, and then we have different characters coming on telling their stories, basically. So it's trying to bring the food bank to an audience. I'm quite sure that most MPs will have heard similar stories in their surgeries. I think there is something about the material being presented in a theatrical form that has a different effect somehow. In my experience, the audiences we've had so far go away feeling very rattled, or straight after the performance they're very rattled and very upset sometimes. That lots of times there have been people in tears.
If anything happens to my daughter because she hasn't had anything to eat in days for whatever reason, I would be the one that gets done for negligence. This way, at least if anything happens to her, I can turn around and say that I did all that I could. Thank you for listening.
That was the actor Lawrence O'Connor and writer and director Tara Osman speaking about the play Food Bank as it is. It'll be performed in the Houses of Parliament in October. I don't know if you're going to go along, George, but food banks, of course, have been a difficult issue for the Tories. The Prime Minister came unstuck when she was confronted by a nurse during the election campaign who said because of austerity and no pay increase, she was having to use a food bank. When you hear Jacob Rees-Mogg saying that the charitable instinct of volunteers is uplifting, is that a sufficient response?
Well, I think he was making one particular point, which is, this country is known around the world and is magnificent for its level of charitable giving. But I don't think he was trying to say what has been implied, which was that food banks are therefore a great thing and we want more of them. Not at all. And the truth is, things are tough. They have been tough in the last few years. I mean, Barry may well try and say, well, this is all Tory problem. Food banks went up 10 times under Tony Blair. It's been part of modern living. The cost of living has gone up. And I think there are some issues, certainly my food bank in my constituency, there are very different sorts of people with different problems there. Some people with cash flow, some people who are genuinely struggling week in, week out, others who just have a temporary issue. And I think if we're really going to tackle poverty, it is about making sure that we're creating jobs. We're giving people a living wage. We're trying to build security into the workplace. And I think that's where basic Conservative economic policies are providing the best hope of all. It's jobs and income that really boost prosperity.
Barry Gardiner, do you agree then that perhaps Jacob Rees-Mogg has been unfairly pilloried? He wasn't making the point necessarily that they're a good thing, but just their existence shows that people can come together.
The people who run these food banks are amazing. But in the fifth richest country in the world, it shames us as a society that we have people who are in work and dependent on food banks. That scene in I, Daniel Blake, when the woman breaks down in the food bank, she opens the tin and
that's
stuffs
the film.
it, and it is one of the most powerful scenes in any movie that I have ever seen. And it still makes me tear up just thinking that that is what some people in our society are having to go through.
As you say,
and it's not right.
But subsequent and successive governments have seen food bank use rise. I mean, Layla, your party was in government when the numbers using food banks increased dramatically. So your party has some responsibility as well as the two parties here.
I think all parties do, and I think wider society does, because we have for a very, very long time just ignored that these issues were happening. I mean, George's comment that this is now part of modern living, I think is quite telling, and it absolutely should not be. It is a blight on our society that this happens at all. I completely agree with Barry about the I, Daniel Blake scene, and in fact, my entire family, including my stiff upper lip dad, were in tears over it. And it is a common occurrence, unfortunately. I this week was talking about a school in Oxford that had to go to the local food bank to ask if they were able to cover lunches, and of course that wasn't able to be something that they could do. But there is something seriously wrong in our very rich Western society that this is happening, and we all need to address that.
That performance at the Houses of Parliament next month.